G'day, I'm Murray, we're in my backyard, and today I'm going to take you through how I repot pandans. This is part 3 in my pandan series, so I hope you've been following along. And I worked out this technique based on observations of the plant and how I thought it best to get the maximum roots for that plant. So there's only one lateral move, which I will show you, and then the upwards moves, and I think I've got a really good technique for it. And I don't know, maybe everybody does it this same way. I'd not seen it done, I'd not heard of it being done this way, but I do it this way and it seems to work. So give it a shot. So here we have a plant in a 300ml pot. That is the first size I generally put these plants into unless they're too big to fit. So this is ready to go into here. This is a 1 litre pot, and this is what I consider to be a lateral move because there's not a lot of height difference between these pots, unless I've managed to put this deep in the plant, in the pot, so that the soil level is lower. So this guy is going to be quite root bound, and once it gets into here and we fill this to level with the soil level, it'll have a whole bunch of new soil that it can expand out into and take the nutrients from and spread its roots out. So this is a lateral move because we're not getting any further pot depth at this stage. As usual, this is potting mix. It's got fertilizer in it and it's going to make this plant happy. Now I'm expecting this to be quite root bound because they usually are. Man, we have a winner. Totally expected. Normally I would try and loosen the roots on the plant, but I'm just going to damage them if I do. So I'm just going to set that in place and top it up with soil. Right, that's step 1. Step 2. We're going from a 1 litre pot to a 4.5 litre pot, and we're going to do the same thing we did the first time. We're going to plant it down there. So get it out. Not terribly root bound, but starting to get there. Now I like to try and center the plants in the pots. It really doesn't matter. It was a little lopsided in that pot, so I'll just try and get it in the middle. And now I'm going to fill it to the level that it had in the previous pot. It's not going to get any additional soil to fill it up to halfway or the top. Close. Right, so we're about that deep in the pot. Right, Odd thing, I just found this snail shell in the pot and I thought there'd be a snail in it, but there isn't. So how did it get on top of this pot? Maybe a second snail carried it up there. I really have no idea at this stage. However, I digress. We are now doing our final stage of potting up, at least as far as I'm aware at the moment. We're going from our 4.5 litre pot, hang on, to our 35 litre bag. Now I'm sure you can see a theme here. We're going to be putting this right in the bottom of our bag and filling it up to the same height the pot is at, which is here. Now we're getting into some serious volume here, so what I usually do is I use a mixture of, ooh, got some robust roots there. I use a combination of potting mix, mushroom compost and well rotted cow manure. This might be a bit tricky here. Can. Oh, good plant. So we've got a good strong mass of root material. I'm wearing sunglasses here because I don't want to get one of these in the eyeball. I'm sure it would hurt. It hasn't happened yet, and sunglasses aren't a guarantee that it won't happen. Now this takes a lot of material to fill up, even to just level with that top of the previous pot. So this is potting mix. Slide that over a bit to try and make life easier. I'm just going to even that out around the plant. Do it roughly. I've got some rotted down cow manure. It's largely nearly dirt, except that there's nothing in it except rotted down vegetable matter that the cows ate. Right. I usually try and go about 2 parts potting mix to 1 part manure to 1 part mushroom compost. Alright, just spread that around again and even it out. And we're back on the potting mix. A little bit more potting mix. And we're done. Now I'll show you inside this. So it's hard to see from here, but we're about halfway up. We're nearly exactly halfway up the pot. That's some cow manure down there. So I'm going to go put this with my other plants in bags of the same size. Obviously these are the next two leaves I'm going to be taking off this plant. And we can move on to stage 2 of the transition of pots process. So now we're going to explain why I keep saying plant plants as deeply as you can in the pots. These two, they're not quite the same. This is about half full of potting mix, and this just got a little bit more. So periodically I will come along to these pots and I will top them up with either a quality potting mix or aged manure. This was the half full one, so I've gone to about, it's not as full as it could be. So every second time I do this, I use cow manure. Well-aged cow manure. And every other time I'll use potting mix. The last time I did this, I used cow manure. I can tell from looking at the other pots, but these guys have never been topped up before. So I filled that one right up because that only needed a third to get right up to the top. So that's its last fill in this size of pot. As I'm going to do the same for this one. So this guy is going to get topped up once more, and these guys, next time I come to this pot and I say, oh, that's full, I'll put it into one of these, and the plant's on the edge of the pot, so I will center it like so as much as I can. I will also tease out the roots and see if I can get it any lower in this pot. So I'm continually trying to grow down because these plants root off the trunk, and the more roots they have, the more productive in leaf material they're going to be. So we've got a plan in operation here. So these are the small size pots. I'll go and see what, if any, of the plants in this size need topping up. Usually I go straight from this pot size to the next pot size because these guys are usually pretty close to the top. But I think I've got one or two in my vast collection that are in this size that need a bit of a top up. So we'll see if I can find any of those. At the moment I only have 4 in this size of pot. That one needs to go into a larger pot size, and the other 3 all need topping up. This is barely half full, which is awesome. So the longer they can spend in the smallest pot possible, the better it is. This guy is so small that I am not going to top him up at all. I'm just going to pop him on the bench and let him grow. Oh, I found another one. They do get around. That guy could use a top up. So this guy is going up next. We can get rid of him and we'll top these three up. For some reason this one's got a tag on it that said it was repotted on the 23rd of the 1st, 2023, which is almost exactly 5 months ago. I don't know why I did that. Oh, it was probably beside some other pots that were less recently topped up, or older pots or younger pots, so that I could tell them apart. So it's not rocket science. Just top them up. Now these guys did not get a manure top up last time because they weren't big enough for that. So we just put the soil in, call it done. Now I was looking for a resource that told me how to grow pandan and how to grow it in pots, and in much of Southeast Asia I suspect the plants just grow themselves and they've got plenty of shade and they can plant them in their yards, but it's not the case here. We've got hot sun, it's pretty nasty, and it's something that I've had to work out for myself. This could be a very common technique. I didn't read about it though. I worked out how I thought the plant would grow best, and I hope I'm right. But if you think this is a stupid idea, please tell me why in the comments and what a better way to go is. Because, hey, you stop learning in the garden, you may as well stop gardening. Right, next pot size. Here we have a plant that has never been topped up because it was put straight from one of these into the bottom of that and just filled in around it. And we have a plant that has been previously topped up with manure. They're quite similar levels, but the manure has a completely different look to the potting mix. I'm sure you might have trouble seeing that, but it's visible in person. So just out of curiosity, let's have a little look at this plant. I'm not taking it out of this pot, just having a browse. So we have a good healthy root system, and it's started to travel upwards into the newer soil in the pot. Let's encourage that by putting some even newer soil in its pot. One of them. So this is the system. We go from the smaller pot size into a pot of the same height, but with more soil added to it. Then we go into the taller pots here, and then we go into the 35 litre bags, the grow bags. Now, yeah, I'm going to stop there because there might be 2 more top-ups for that particular pot, and the longer I can keep it happy and healthy in one of these smaller pots, the less room it's going to take up. So the more leaf material I'm going to get. And the reason why I'm working on an old tray here is to save spilling potting mix so I can use it again. So this guy's first top up doesn't have to be a big one. I don't think it's been in here very long, although I have harvested a few leaves off it. I can see that. It's alright. That one's done. And we'll salvage our potting mix. Right. Obviously, I also top up the plants in the grow bags periodically, although sometimes there I have to wait until I can remove some of the suckers, basil suckers that are growing, before I can top up the pots. On other occasions I have to top them up so that those basil suckers will grow roots, so that I can take them out after some time. So if they're aerial, they won't grow roots. If they're buried, they will grow roots. And ideally I like to try and take those suckers off when they've got some roots. So that's why I pot the way I pot. Start them small, as deep as you can. You'll get 1, perhaps 2 top-ups out of it. Into the next pot and just fill. Try and get it further down, but that's not always possible. So if it's not possible, just fill in. They'll be fine in a pot that size for a while. Then, to there, you should get several layers of fill out of that. Bear in mind, all of those plants that I have that you saw in the first of these videos, I haven't counted them lately. I bought 2 plants and they've all just been divided from there. So you get more and more and more plants if you divide them. If you don't and you're growing them in the ground, you'll end up with a mighty clump. And fair enough, you can end up with a lot of mighty clumps if you spread them around. But multiple top-ups are available. Where it falls down is when you let them get a little bit larger, as you sometimes have to do, and you end up in a taller pot, which isn't quite as good for topping up. But you can usually loosen up the roots and get them to sink a bit. And it doesn't really matter because, you know, once they're in this, they'll go up into a grow bag afterwards, or a giant pot if you're using a giant pot. I'm only talking about my system of growing them and how I do it. I'm sure there's other ways, but I wish there'd been a resource available on YouTube or the internet that told me how to grow these things in pots, because I would have liked it. Anyway, I think that's about it for this episode of how I grow pandan in pots. Tell me how you do it if you grow in pots. Tell me how you do it in general. I'd love to hear in the comments if you think there's a better way for me to operate. Bear in mind, I don't want to build a raised bed under this tree because its roots are going to invade that raised bed and suck nutrients out of it like crazy. So, you know, a tree this size, it's better used as a shade shelter for potted trees, I feel. I know I could move my trees closer to the rising sun so they could get a little bit more sunlight in the mornings, but the larger pandans seem lush and dark green, which is a good look for them. They're not missing out on sunlight, so I'm okay with that. Although as I put more and more plants into grow bags, as my size increases, I'm going to need more room out the front of the grow, of where I've got them placed at the moment. But I'm moving things around already and I'm anticipating the problem, so I should be able to get well out ahead of it. So, good luck to you in all of your endeavours, particularly in the garden, and have a good one. Stay tuned for the next part.